The trade deadline has passed. All that's left to do now is for the Guardians to play ball, win games, and see what happens. They did that over the weekend, and they finally called up one of their best performing prospects.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into a Monday morning episode of Locked On Guardians. It is your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. It's our favorite half hour of the day. We hope it is yours as well. And we're covering the Cleveland Guardians from the majors to the minors, the draft, and everything in between. We're doing it every day. I'm Justin Lada. I have been the co-host of this podcast for almost 3 years now. Before that, and currently, I have been providing prospect analysis and scouting reports on the Guardians minor league system for the past 18 years. Hard to believe that's half my life at this point. Jeff Ellis off tonight, a little bit of food poisoning. We were so excited to see each other over the weekend in person. Jeff got a little sick and couldn't keep it up. So it's a solo episode here on a Monday, but we got a lot to talk about. CJ Kayfus is up. We'll talk about the Guardians, whether or not they winning 2 or 3 against the Rockies and the Twins this past week was enough for them, even though it was series wins. We'll talk about Gavin Williams' transformation. Of course, we'll start today's show talking about the call-up of CJ Kayfus and why it's a little unprecedented, but really it's not. Before we get into all that today, this episode of Locked On Guardians brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Go to 5hourenergy.com today and use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your first order. Only valid through September 30th. Order transfusion flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. All right, so CJ Kayfus is up finally, and we've been talking about it all year. The Guardians definitely could have used CJ Kayfus a lot earlier in the year the way he was playing. And we know the Guardians, they like to search for the perfect moment to call up a prospect. They always want to do it when a prospect's playing well, when they have the at-bats for him, when he fits on the roster perfectly, when it's 69 degrees and sunny, nice, all that kind of stuff. They want to make sure the temperature's perfect and the guy's family is in town and it's not on his birthday and there's 40% humidity. I don't know. They want to make all these things very controllable, and that's great. You want to put your guys in the best position to succeed, obviously. That's the goal of everything. And in the end, the Guardians actually didn't stick to that, if we're being honest. CJ Kayfus has actually had a pretty bad July. His OPS for the month of July was something under 800, under 700, I think. And really, he's not a good fit on the roster right now. They have Nolan Jones. They have Daniel Schneemann. And those guys are pretty much all right fielders, even though they've both moonlighted as center fielders. And then you have CJ Kayfus, who's not really an outfielder, but he is playing the outfield this year. They wanted him to play first base. They talked for a couple months about how they really preferred his debut to come at first base. Well, the trade deadline passed, and they didn't move Carlos Santana. I don't know if they tried to move Carlos Santana or not. I think they probably gauged the market and saw that it really wasn't going to happen. It didn't make sense. And if you go back to 2023, I know this isn't really related to CJ Kayfus, but it sort of is. When they made the trades in 2023, remember they had to bring in Cole Calhoun, right? Cole Calhoun was not helping this team to the playoffs. He was actually finishing his career off. He wanted to get his pension and get 10 years in the majors. And the Guardians felt like they needed a dad in the clubhouse. They didn't have Austin Hedges that year. They needed somebody in the clubhouse, a leadership guy, and they had a very young team. I don't know that this team necessarily needed that. It's still a young team, and you have Austin Hedges anyway. But I guess Santana's kind of that Cole Calhoun right now, it kind of seems like. And, he didn't play on Sunday, and CJ Kayfus got in the lineup. Kyle Manzardo was in the lineup, and they scored 4 runs, and most of it had to do with CJ Kayfus in the 9th inning, and none of it had to do with Kyle Manzardo. We'll talk about that later in today's show. But regardless of this, it's a perfect fit. The opportunity wasn't there for CJ Kayfus at first base, yet he's here anyway. The Guardians called him up when he wasn't playing well. They didn't have the right opportunity for him as far as position. But they've got him at bats in 2 games, right? He got at bats on Saturday and Sunday. He started in right field on Saturday, and he started at DH on Sunday. So they got at bats for him. And if you watched my short on YouTube about CJ Kayfus and the call-up on Saturday, I said Saturday was a really good matchup for him because Bailey Ober is not a guy who throws hard and has a good changeup. Of all the non-fastball pitches that Kayfus plays against, it's, has seen, the changeup has been probably one of the better pitches he's seen. He struggles a lot with other pitches. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But fastballs, he hits well, and especially when it's low velocity, and changeups, he hits well. So that was a good matchup. But Bailey Ober kind of ate him for lunch on Saturday. Not really surprised, all the changeups. And then he had a tough time late in that game as well. Even though he had an RBI ground on his first at bat, which is good. But CJ Kayfus overall, the scouting report I gave is up on YouTube Shorts. But if you haven't seen that, basically it's any hard velocity can get Kayfus out. And pitches low and in out of the strike zone will get him to chase. For some reason, as a lefty, most lefties love that low and in sweet spot. CJ Kayfus' bat doesn't do that. He basically covers the inner half and upper half of the zone. And then the outer half of the zone, not so much. And that's why changeups away work on him. He hasn't struggled against lefties, oddly enough. And, he stayed in the lineup against Cody Funderburk and the lefties on Sunday. So we'll see about that. But for CJ Kayfus being called up, and he had a nice debut with a double, and he drove in a run on Saturday with the RBI ground out. But I wanted to go back and look at this because I think all year we've talked about how the Guardians are slow playing their prospects. They don't promote them, and we never promote guys. CJ Kayfus is up in 2025, August of 2025. He was drafted in July 2023. So if you don't even consider that he played, August and September of 2023, it's 2 months of baseball. And he's coming off of obviously a college season that year. He played 2024 at Lake County in Akron. He finished the year in Akron. Also finished Akron. I'll point this out too. He finished Akron in 2024 with some injury issues. I don't know exactly what the injury issues were, but I do know fatigue was a factor. It felt like late in the year, I heard that Kayfus felt like he was starting to fatigue a little bit. The long season was getting to him, and that contributed to a late season slide. So what he did over the offseason, which has helped him with power, is he has put on a little bit of muscle. He's worked on his body a little bit to try to get through the rigors of a full pro season, especially major leagues. And that's shown out this year from his power in general, and it's going to help him, as we get into the dog days here, which we are here now. But CJ Kayfus' call-up is unprecedented. The Guardians didn't have the best role for him, in terms of position and fit on the roster. But it's unprecedented in the fact that he is up basically 2 years after he was drafted. The Guardians actually moved fairly fast on some of their top college bats. Let's do a little history lesson because, again, the stipulation this year we've talked about has been, the Guardians don't move their bats very fast. They don't promote their prospects. High school prospects, no. College prospects, they do move a little faster. Let's remember that Tanner Bibee and Gavin Williams, by a little bit of force, because of the situation, were up in 2023 because those guys were drafted in 21 and they needed them. But let's go to hitters. Bradley Zimmer, let's just start there. First round pick in 2014. He was up in 2017. So he played a little bit of 14, 15 and 16 in the minors. He was up halfway through 2017. So 2.5 years. Let's look at Ernie Clement. I know Ernie Clement didn't have a long career here, and he's doing good now. The Guardians drafted him in 2017. That was the June draft, remember? But he was in Cleveland in 2021. And let's remember, 2020 didn't happen, so we're going to exclude that. So he had being drafted in 2017, 18, 19, and then he was up in 21. That's 2.5 years. Tyler Naquin, let's go back to Tyler Naquin, drafted in 2012. He was the starter in center field by 2016. So he played a little bit of 14. He played 15, 16, and he played 13, little 12, 13, 14, and 15. So he was a little bit longer in the minors, believe it or not. Jason Kipnis is a really good example of this too. Jason Kipnis was a second-round pick. He was picked in 2009. In 2011, he became up midway through the year. He was their starting second baseman. That's 2 years in the minors. So that's also very similar. There is one more similar prospect I think actually has really good comps to CJ Kayfus and when he was called up and who I think CJ Kayfus can be for this team. And I'm going to tell you that next on Locked On Guardians. We'll get into that, Gavin Williams' performance over the weekend, and if the Guardians did enough, taking 2 or 3 against the Rockies. So stay tuned. Time to fuel up and turn up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion, bringing the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor, your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol. That's what you want, energy and not the fullback of the alcohol. It's a quick, energizing shot, whether you're sinking birdies, making memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. I have told you before, I'm not a good golfer. People don't like golfing with me. But when I do golf, it tends to be a long day. So I need energy. Even if I play scramble, it is a long day. So I need energy. My friends need energy. Whoever's playing golf with me needs the energy to put up with me. And that's why we turn to 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. All about good times with good people, good flavors. Of course, the grape ginger lime gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the beverage cart. If you go to 5-Hour Energy today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONGolf. You're going to get 20% off your first order. This order is only valid, offers only valid until September 30th. On one order, cannot be used in promotions. The code is not good on any subscription orders. So whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Thanks for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, whatever it is you get podcasts. We appreciate all of our everydayers being here with us. And if you're a first-time listener as well, we appreciate you, or even the casuals. I know we've got a lot of both. Got a lot of support over the weekend from our video with Jeff, who was actually in Ohio for a change. So that was a lot of fun to meet up. And, we did a post-game reaction together. But we appreciate all the support there. Make sure you're auto-downloading on audio so you never miss an episode in your feeds. And that helps us out a ton, honestly. And then the video, hit the bell. So you always get the episodes like this, videos like our post-game reactions, breaking news. I did a scouting report on CJ Kayfus. You would have gotten that as well. And, of course, the MLB Squad Show that comes to you once a week from the MLB Channel Network. All right, so I said there was one player who also is a lot like CJ Kayfus in terms of profile, who was also called up on a similar timeline. So Jason Kipnis, timeline-wise, is the closest thing I could find because, again, drafted in 2009, and then in 9 and 10 was in the minors, and then 11 was in AAA and Cleveland. Now, granted, those teams were not playing good baseball. They were developing for the future. This team is developing for the future and playing for now, which I'll talk about later in the segment. But this player was the Guardians Indians first-round draft pick in 2008, and Jason Kipnis just beat him to the majors. He got to the majors in 2011 as well, even though he was drafted a year before Jason Kipnis, and that is Lonnie Chisenhall. Lonnie Chisenhall was drafted in 08. He was up in Cleveland by 11, so you figure he plays a little bit of 08, 09, all of 2010 in the minors, and then in 2011, he's in Cleveland. So that's 3.5 years. Jason Kipnis was a little bit quicker. But my point is, the Guardians with college hitters aren't generally very slow playing. Like, everyone wants to say they slow play the prospects. And you could argue that the Guardians should have had CJ Kayfus up earlier, and I agree with that. But wait, they're not really slow playing prospects to their precedent. Now, I know guys like Nick Kurtz and Jack Caglione. Look, last year was a very special draft class. And we'll talk about Travis Bazzana's heater on Tuesday's show because he's doing great and he should be up next year. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. But CJ Kayfus really was called up on a normal timeline for Cleveland and really pretty quickly. Again, like I said, he played the back half of 23, very little. He played all of 2024, and then he's up here at the end of 2025. And the Guardians also jumped him 2 levels in a year. Let's point that out. He started the season in Akron, got to Columbus, finished in Cleveland. That is not something they typically do. Again, Lonnie Chisenhall in Columbus 11. He was in Columbus 11 and Cleveland 11. He didn't play in Akron at all in 2011. Jason Kipnis did play in Columbus only in 2011, so he jumped very quickly as well. So it's not often Cleveland jumps guys 2 levels in a season, especially when it comes to position players. But he is a special college bat. He's forced their hand, which is really good. And I'll talk more about CJ Kayfus in the next segment, what he did over the weekend and what we can expect going forward from him. But it is, again, not out of precedent for the Guardians to do this. They don't slow play their prospects that much. Chase DeLauder, I know someone will point out Chase DeLauder. Look, he was drafted in 2023 as well. And I'm sorry, 2022. Injuries have just stalled him. He'd be up by now if it wasn't for injuries. That's not 100% on them, but it's also on them for drafting him. But we'll get into more of CJ Kayfus later. I want to talk about the pitching staff over the weekend. And Gavin Williams has really taken a step forward recently. Friday night was probably maybe the best performance we have seen from him all season. Like that was pretty spectacular from Gavin Williams overall that night. 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, 2 walks, 4 hits. Now I know, you're facing part of the St. Paul Saints lineup, right? We'll talk about the rest of the pitching staff in a minute, but Gavin Williams, a really fantastic start. I mean, he was very, very efficient, very effective against the Twins on Friday. And we're just seeing a lot of things come together for him right now. He didn't allow a run in 6 innings there. You go back to the Royal start, 6 innings, only had 3 strikeouts, but he got 6 innings, only 2 runs. That gave you a chance, right? Start before that against the Athletics. Again, I know it's the Athletics, but again, they have a good lineup right now. 7 innings, 11 strikeouts. That was probably his best performance, let's be honest. And 1 walk. And then before that, they gave up 3 to the White Sox and 5 strikeouts, 5 walks. But he had a fantastic month of July, honestly. Like the first start was against the Cubs, not great, but then he pitched well against the Tigers. He did okay against the White Sox. Fantastic against the A's, fantastic against the Royals, and off to a really good start against the Twins. Right now, I know maybe some people want to say Slade Ciccone, and I can't really go there just yet with Slade Ciccone as good as he's been. But right now, Gavin Williams is the ace of this team, which is believable and unbelievable because in spring training, we really thought that was the potential for Gavin Williams, right? I especially bought into the hype, the breakout in spring training. We talked about the increased fastball velocity, the secondaries, the things he's added. Everything just looked better. He was healthy. And the fastball velocity is there. It's fantastic. 84th percentile in baseball. Whiff rate is up there. Guys don't chase against them, which is weird. Obviously, the extension, which the Guardians like. We didn't really get a chance to talk about Carlos Hernandez, but we can get into that later, maybe tomorrow when Jeff is back. But Gavin Williams has really taken the leap, I would say, recently. He has transformed himself into the leader of the staff. I mean, 2.57 ERA in June, 3.03 in July. It was 3.28 in May, which, a little bit higher, but pretty darn good. Not really ace-like. But I would say June and July, very ace-like numbers in terms of ERA, averaging almost a strikeout an inning. The walks are still a bit of a concern, but maybe this team doesn't actually have an ace. But Gavin Williams right now is stepping up and filling a void for you that you don't have because Tanner Bibee just hasn't had a consistent season, whether it's been sequencing, pitch mix, control, food poisoning for him, just ups and downs this season that he's worked through after that contract and just how weird the season started. I still think, I know we had a comment saying, are you worried about Tanner Bibee? I'm not worried about Tanner Bibee. Like, it's definitely not going great for him right now. It's been a very bumpy season for him. But I'm not worried long-term. Like, will he come out of it this season? I don't know. This might be a season for Tanner Bibee where he has to overcome some adversity and use it to make him better in the future. Long-term, no, I'm not worried about Tanner Bibee. I think he's going to be just fine. It's really for Tanner just 1 inning, a couple of batters that it's really getting to him. It's not like he's going out there and having blow-up games out there. He is just literally having a bad inning that's blowing up his entire start. It's not like he's going 2 innings, giving up 7 runs, which, Joey Cantillo on Sunday, 1 inning and 4 runs, and then he was great the rest of the way, which we'll talk about. But so, no, I'm not worried long-term about Tanner Bibee, but I do think Gavin Williams has kind of stepped up and taken over the leadership role on this staff in terms of performance, and the guy you could expect to either end a losing streak or get you a win or keep your offense close. And when we don't have a great offense in games you absolutely need to win, which they needed to win 2 or 3 out of the Twins this week. And I know we talked about sweep, which we'll talk about next. Was that enough? But Gavin Williams really has stepped up and filled that void. Maybe this team doesn't have an ace. Maybe they don't. And they probably don't. And that doesn't really separate this team from being good because the pitching staff overall hasn't been a problem because, Tanner's been better at times. Logan Allen's found his groove. Slade Ciccone's been fantastic. And Gavin Williams has stepped up. They were good when Ortiz was allowed to play, all that kind of stuff. The starting pitching hasn't been the problem this year. Yes, they probably don't have your traditional ace. They don't have a Garrett Cole or a Garrett Crochet or a Framber Valdez, whatever, Luis, whatever you want to call it. They don't have that, but they're pretty darn good. And they're not causing this team not to make the playoffs. The offense, the bullpen, and some injuries, and the outside circumstances that have been beyond 23 guys' control, not named Emmanuel and Luis. That's been an issue as well. So it's not the starting pitching, but Gavin Williams, like I said, has really stepped up and filled the void right now. And I'm not going to play the who would start game 1 of a playoff series for you tomorrow because the Guardians are likely chasing a wild card spot. And I don't know if they can shoehorn their best pitcher to start game 1 of a playoff when you're chasing a wild card. It might need the last couple of games to decide whether you're in or out. So you might not be able to have Gavin available for that, which is probably a good thing because, then you have other guys that can step up. Like Tanner could be a game one starter. Gavin could. Slade Ciccone, I'd be comfortable with him as a game one starter. It's not ideal, but, they don't have to have their ace go game one because they're all pitching pretty solidly. We'll talk about the Guardians, whether they should have taken 6 games in a row against the Rockies and the Twins. If 2 or 3 was enough, we'll talk more about Kayfus, this pitching staff, and what happened this weekend against the Twins coming up on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. Summer sports, they are in full swing. They are going heavy. Fall's coming up soon, too. So if you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, which is going on, high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel really is the best way to make every game more exciting. We know you're already following the action, so make it a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel. You can get on the game while your friends are still out working on their tan, maybe getting a sunburn. Now, the Guardians this week against the Mets. It's a little bit iffy. And if you're a Guardians player watching this, don't use FanDuel. But if you are not a Guardians player and you're looking at FanDuel, it's Sean Manaea and Slade Ciccone on Monday. Sean Manaea just came off the IL, has had 4 appearances. He's been really good. We know the Guardians don't hit lefties well, but guess what? The Mets, they hit righties really well. The Guardians have a 80 WRC plus against lefties, against righties. The Mets are hitting 114 WRC plus. It's over under 8. Cleveland is favored by 1.5. I'd probably take the 8 over on 8. I think I could see a 6-3 win by the Mets. I'm not taking the Mets in this one because it just doesn't match up very well overall. But that's up to you as long as you're not a Guardians player. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $100 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's wrap up today's Locked On Guardians. And by the way, if you want to be a insider, I gave a scouting report. I gave the call-up news, all other kind of stuff, plus bonus content and other things as well to our insiders group. That is joinsubtext.com/insiders. We were talking during the trade deadline. We talk during games. We chat when there's news happening. Didn't give them. I was at Akron on Sunday. I didn't give the insiders my thoughts from Akron on Sunday, but I can write something up and give that to them as well. But that is joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGuardians if you want to be an insider and chat with us, plus a little bit of bonus content and some extra insights. All right, so the Guardians had a very quiet trade deadline. I would say the trade deadline for them was more emotional than it was impact on the actual field and performance for them. Trading Shane Bieber, he was there with them on Wednesday for their finale against the Rockies and got to be with his teammates one more time. And I'm sure the Guardians kept him appraised of trade talks and who was interested. I know there was a lot of scouts at his start on Tuesday. So I'm pretty sure the Guardians kept him really in the loop of what was going on. But he got to hang with his teammates one more time, and then he was gone. They didn't make any other moves besides the Carlos Hernandez thing. So as far as on-the-field talent's concerned, the Guardians didn't make any other moves at the trade deadline that should impact them on the field. Emotionally, between trading Bieber, that can be tough because a lot of guys in this team, even though they're young and he hasn't played a lot the last couple of years, still a teammate to a lot of them, still a friend to a lot of them. So you worry about that. Plus, what this team has gone through with Emmanuel Clase after the Luis Ortiz thing, it's been a very turbulent year for them, I would say, especially with expectations coming into the year. This should be a playoff team, and maybe they still are. So with that being said, you would have liked them to have swept the Rockies because the Rockies are terrible. You would have liked them to sweep the Twins because the Twins did go out and have a trade deadline where they did decimate their on-field product. They traded a lot of teammates. They traded a lot of on-field talent that was contributing to them in the years past, but also contributing this year to not being a good team. But they changed the fabric of the roster for 2025 and well beyond. So they should have been reeling. But the Twins weren't. They didn't reel. They played tough. Bailey Ober was usually his Bailey Ober self. They faced Joe Ryan on Friday, who didn't get traded. Joe Ryan is a very tough customer. The Twins just didn't roll over, to be honest with you. They didn't roll over. They still had Trevor Larnach. They still had Matt Wallner, Royce Lewis, and they had some other guys that they called up, like Edward Julian was back and Brooks Lee. And I'm not saying like, oh, it's okay the Guardians lost, because I got to be honest, on Sunday you faced Jose Arena, which when Jeff and I were out on Saturday just chatting baseball, having dinner, we're like, José Ramírez still in the league? Like, didn't actually realize José Ramírez was still in baseball. So yeah, you would have liked to have won Sunday, right? Because José Ramírez is not a good major league pitcher, and they hit him a little bit hard, but he only gave 2 runs in 4 innings. That's a little bit disappointing. And the Guardians, for sure, obviously, Joey Cantillo's 4-run first inning didn't go well for them. What's wild, though, is Joey Cantillo, after that first inning, was fantastic, right? He had a 30-pitch first inning, wound up throwing 91 pitches over the next 4 2/3 innings, and had 19 whiffs. Like, he was fantastic. And he took out the first inning. That was by far one of Joey Cantillo's best starts of the year. I don't know what happened in that first inning, other than the fact that he was throwing strikes and they were hammering everything. His changeup was absolutely lethal. But in the first inning, they were able to hit everything. So I say that is, I think it would have been great if the Guardians took 6 in a row against the the Rockies and Twins. The reality is this is still baseball, and the Guardians are not a perfect team. They're not a great team. They're just an okay team, which is what they've been all year. And they had their chances to win on Sunday, let's be honest. Steven Kwan, he got the love on Friday for not being traded. And he had a couple of nice plays. That throw in Friday in game 1 was huge. Bo Naylor's tag also very huge in that game to keep that run off the board, which is why they were able to have the walk-off win. Went 0 for 5 on Sunday. And Kyle Manzardo, 0 for 3 with the walk on Sunday. He had runners on in 1 at bat. He got on the double play. Then he had 2 on against a lefty late in the game, and he popped up. And then to be fair, José Ramírez, who hit a home run on his Jersey Day on Saturday, which the man's a legend, like always shows up on those days and in general, obviously, but that's just, extra legendary for Jose to hit that big home run on his Jersey Day. Everyone, it was a sold-out crowd. Everybody was there and enjoying themselves, went nuts, lots of fun. The energy in this ballpark is so much different when things like that happen. And we could talk about that later in the week, too. But Jose was 2 for 4 on Sunday with a big home run in the first inning that cut the lead in half. He was up with a chance to win the game in the 9th inning on Sunday, and he popped up. And so did Daniel Sheeman, again, who had 3 hits and a double on Sunday, who was fantastic. Daniel Sheeman's been great lately, by the way, I want to point out. I was a little bit down on Daniel Sheeman this year. I thought he was just the 26th guy on the roster, which, he may or may not be. But I would say he's been pretty decent with his at-bats. It's been a good couple week stretch for him. Obviously, he's off to a good start in August, but he popped up too. Those guys did their job early in the game. So them not coming through the 9th inning, that sucks. And those are the guys hitting 2 and 3 that you would expect to come through and win you a game. They didn't, right? They didn't do it. But Steven Kwan and Kyle Manzardo being 0 for 8 really hurts you on Sunday, as well as being behind on the 8th ball. So I still think the Guardians winning 2 of 3 and winning, obviously 4 of their last 6 is pretty darn good, considering where this team is. They are not a perfect team. They have a lot of holes, right? It's a very messy team. Bo Naylor had a decent weekend overall. Gabriel Arias is in this lineup. He had a good day on Sunday, but he's up and down. I think they're winding down Carlos Santana a little bit. Like, he definitely can't be hitting 5th or 4th anymore. The problem is they don't have anybody in that role, so it's like you got to put Bo Naylor there, who thankfully is showing some signs of life. And then you got CJ Kayfus. And you're still playing Angel Martinez, who's streaky. Nolan Jones just hasn't shown enough this year. He's had mini flashes, and that's about it. But he's still hanging around for some reason, because there's not a better fit on the roster than Nolan Jones. I just generally don't know who you're going to call up. Like Noel, you call him to face lefties. Maybe. I don't know. Not really the guy. Maybe I can relent and say just do it for the rest of the year, because I know what Nolan Jones isn't, right? Rodriguez is not the guy. Brito's hurt. P. Halpin, not the guy. It's an imperfect roster. And that's why I'm okay with CJ Kayfus coming up in this situation ultimately. Would you have liked to have CJ Kayfus sooner? Absolutely, I would too. But again, like I said in the first segment, the Guardians, this is actually a normal timeline for them. They are not holding guys back. I think 2 years, especially as a college bat, 2.5 years is an exceptionally quick timeline. And CJ Kayfus forced the issue, even though the Guardians had to be forced into it by the fact that they didn't have another way to turn in terms of Chase DeLauder, and they weren't able to move Carlos Santana. But the fact is, they finally did it. Like, the Guardians at least finally relented and said, we're just going to call him up and play him. Even though he has to play right field, even though we have Nolan Jones and Sheeman, We still have Carlos Santana. We're going to call up and play him. And this is great because this helps you in 2025 because now you get to see CJ Kayfus the rest of the season. He gets to go through all the first, right? The first hit, the first time finding the locker room, the first post-game press conference, the first interview with Andre Nan, getting an ice back whenever that does happen when they win. Playing right field, whether it's in Cleveland or New York or Detroit or whatever. You get those things out of the way right now, and that helps him for 2026. You get a chance to see what he can do now and say, okay, here's the things you need to attack over the offseason. This is what you saw from major league pitchers. And as I said before, the things that CJ Kayfus struggles with are good velocity. 95, he crushed fastballs in the minors, right? But if you go to 95 and above in the minors, slugging percentage of 267. He's going to see a lot of hard heat. He won't see it on Monday. Probably wouldn't play Monday, if we're being honest. Maybe he won't. Maybe he will. I don't know. It's Sean Manaea. But he's going to see some heat from that Mets bullpen. They traded for a lot of hard throwers, except for the sidewinding dude, whatever. But he's going to see heat. He's going to see stuff on the outer edge. He's going to see breaking stuff low and in where he does struggle. And those are all things at the major league level he has to go out and get used to. And you're looking on the screen on YouTube, and that's his expected weighted on base average by zone. You can see middle of the zone and inner half, pretty good. Anything on the outer half of the strike zone and on the inner half low, he struggles. But you want to get these things figured out at the major league level. Maybe he helps you in 2025. He can't be worse than Nolan Jones. He can't be worse than Jonathan Rodriguez. He can only help you. He can't make it anything worse, even defensively. Rodriguez was bad defensively. Nolan Jones is fine. Kayfus doesn't have his arm, but he can only help you. And if he doesn't really push you to a playoff spot in 2025, that's okay. Because, again, as I've always said, you either are a winning team or you're going to be building one. And CJ Kayfus is going to either help this team win this year and get to the playoffs, or he's going to help them build a winning team by figuring out if he is a part of the 2026 roster. So that's why he's up. That's why it's good, even if there are not perfect fits. And it's about time. That's all I can say. It's about time. For who's going to get called up next, we don't know. Jeff and I will try to prognosticate a little more to see what happens next with this minor league roster, including Travis Pisana, who had a fantastic weekend. So we're going to be back on Tuesday talking Guardians, Mets. We'll talk about the next steps, the minors, who's hot, who should be called up next. We'll talk about the future of this franchise, the rest of 2025, and the rest going into 2026. But the Guardians, they're still in a playoff race. They're still only 3 out. The Rangers aren't perfect. The Mariners certainly got better. It's going to be tough. But I'd rather have competitive baseball that matters in September than not. So far, we're on track for that. Come back tomorrow for a lot more on Locked On Guardians. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for being an everydayer. Download daily, rate, review, all that stuff helps. And in the meantime, go Guardians, go.